Welcome to European Journeys. This is the ninth stage of a series in which we explore the Christianization of Norway. And for the past few stages, we have explored the impact of one of its major influencers, and that is obviously King Olaf Tryggvason. Well, today we are going to continue and finish with the impact of Olaf Tryggvason on the Christianization of Norway. And to do so, we are going to visit the region known as Trøndelag. Now, Trøndelag is a region that you might probably remember because we visited it in a previous episode to go to a small town called Melhus. And in fact, we are returning there now, but to visit the main city of Trøndelag, that is obviously Trondheim. Trondheim is also the fourth major urban area of Norway after Oslo, Bergen, and Stavanger. And it is also the second oldest city of Norway. The oldest city of Norway is Tønsberg. It's located in the southeast of Oslo, and it was founded by Harald Fairhair during the pagan era. Well, this means that Trondheim is the oldest Christian city of Norway, and it was founded by King Olaf Tryggvason. Now, Olaf Tryggvason didn't give the name Trondheim, he named it Nidaros, and that is because the river Nidelva flows through Trondheim, and Nidaros simply means the mouth of the Nid or Nidelva. That is because the river flows there into the Trondheimsfjord. Now, today what we are going to do is explore the area where the city was founded. Now, in the sagas, we read that Olaf Tryggvason founded there a church and a palace. These were the first two buildings that he erected there. We can already see his Christian outlook to what a city should be. And so the area we are going to visit is located, if you look at the picture there, on the right side of the river. It's the left shores of the river because the river flows towards the picture. And so on the right side there, you see the tower, the spire of a church there. That's not the church that Olaf founded, but it's not so far from there, in a street, a small street named Krambugata that we are going to go. And there we find a museum, in fact, named Klemenskirken, and you can see there the picture. Now, Klemenskirken really means Clemens Church. Now, the building doesn't look at all like a church, as you can see. But as you enter in, you realize the reason why it is called Klemenskirken. It is, in fact, the site, an archaeological site, of what are the remains of one of the oldest churches of the city. And it's a church that was founded, in fact, in the 11th or 10th, 11th centuries, around those times. Now, there are discussions. Some say that it might not be the church that Olaf founded, because measurements would indicate that it was founded just a few decades after the death of Olaf Tryggvason. But nevertheless, if this were not to be the place where Olaf founded his church, the first church of Nidaros, of Trondheim, was nonetheless most probably founded not so far from that site, really in that same area of what is today Trondheim. So we are in fact there most probably on the place, on the site where the city was founded. And what is quite amazing, in fact, is that this archaeological site, the remains of this church, were just discovered 8 years ago. So this is pretty impressive indeed. Now, let's talk a little bit about how and why Olaf Tryggvason founded a city there. Now, the main reason that he founded the city there is that if you look at the map, you really see that the Nidelva River forms a bend there, which makes that the city of Trondheim, of Nidaros at the time, could be surrounded by almost totally by waters, which obviously are pretty good natural defenses. You have the Trondheimsfjord in the north, and then the river Nidelva that forms a bend there. So it's inside the bend that Nidaros was founded. But obviously, Olaf Tryggvason had military purposes there. He wanted to build a fortress to be protected by enemies. Now, who were those enemies that could possibly threaten Olaf Tryggvason? If you remember, in our last episode, we saw that Olaf was appointed king, not so far from Nidaros, in fact, and he was, in fact, accepted by the entire nation. But nonetheless, he saw his reign as a mission, the mission to Christianize his land. And we've seen how he did that. He went from region to region, requiring the people to be baptized in the Christian faith. He had pretty much quite a good success in the southern part of the country, as we've seen in our last episode. And now he was going back north, trying to continue his mission to the peoples of the northern part of the country. And so he arrived here in what was to become Nidaros, in that area. And there, in fact, not so far from where Nidaros was founded, we had the capital of the former king of Norway, that is the last pagan ruler of Norway, Håkon Jarl. He had his palace there, and also one of the major pagan temples of the country was located there. And after the death of Håkon Jarl, paganism remained quite strong in this area. But nonetheless, Olaf Tryggvason went there and required the people, the landlords, the bønder as they are called in Norwegians, to be baptized. Well, the reaction was quite violent, so much so that Olaf had to flee. And he fled. Up north, he tried to go and baptize another region of the nation, and he went therefore to Namsos, as you can see on the map. It's 200 kilometers north from Trondheim. But there too, the reaction was also violent, and there again he had to flee. Now, what would he do? He was not accepted in the area of Nidaros. He was not accepted neither in Namsos. What he decided was to return to that area of Nidaros. But instead of going back to the capital, which is today a suburb of Trondheim, which is called Lade, he went there where the river makes a bend and built his city as a fortress. So that was the reason. He knew that he needed a place where he could be safe and where he could, in fact, build a Christian city. And so during the time of the foundation of the city, Olaf continued his mission of baptizing his people and went to an important assembly, a thing as they were called, at Frosta, that is on the other side of the Trondheimsfjord and the northern shores. And there he required again the people to take their baptism. And there again the reaction was quite violent. But this time Olaf was a bit more astute and began to negotiate and said, look, I am going to come to another meeting with you at Mare, that you can see there on the picture, in January next year, so that is the year 997. And there, I am going to offer sacrifices to your gods, to the pagan gods, where that obviously had the capacity to calm down the bønder, who were all pagans, and realized that maybe the king finally is letting go of his requirement to baptize the people. So, but he was astute, he had something in mind. And so they accepted to meet there in January 997. Getting back to Nidaros, and just a short time before that important meeting there, Olaf Tryggvason invited the landlords of the area of Lade, and he invited them for a banquet. So he welcomed them with, we can assume, a lot of food, a lot of drink, and then finally had a serious meeting with them and said, look, I am the king of Norway, and I'm going to offer sacrifices to the gods, the pagan gods there in Mare, and I want to offer a sacrifice that is worthy of a king. I don't want to offer a cheap sacrifice, I want to offer a worthy, expensive sacrifice. Now, pagans know that the expensive sacrifices are human sacrifices, so what he said was, I want to kill several of you in order to offer your bodies to the gods there in Mare. Well, that obviously horrified the guests of Olaf Tryggvason, and the guests pleaded for mercy, asking that he would not kill them. Well, Olaf Tryggvason said, okay, but upon the condition that you take your baptism, that you get baptized in the Christian faith. Well, they accepted very quickly, as we can imagine. That's a method of evangelization that we've discussed about it in our last episode, is not very Christian, but nevertheless, these people took their baptism, obviously, quite constrained. And so this is how the region there finally was baptized, in fact. Well, another aspect of the reason why Olaf founded Nidaros is related to trade. Olaf wanted to make Nidaros a trading center so that merchants from abroad could come and sell their goods and exchange their goods there. Now, why did he think about that? Now, obviously, as a king, you think about the economy of the country, but there might have been another reason. Now, it's not written in the sources there. I'm just bringing it as a possible reason why he thought about that. In Sweden, around those same years, and during the same century, and even the century before, the major centers of Christianization of Sweden were Birka and Visby. Now, both centers were centers of trade. People came from England, from Germany, even from Russia, which were Christianized lands at the time. And so therefore these merchants were mainly Christians who were coming in. They were coming in with the goods, but they were also coming in with the Christian faith. And this is how Visby and Birka became the first Christian centers of Sweden. Maybe I say, Olaf Tryggvason saw the transformation that Sweden was undergoing thanks to these trading centers, and maybe he thought that we should have the same sort of center here in Norway. And so it's maybe why also he thought that Nidaros would be a perfect place, because it was on the shores of the Trondheim Sea, also therefore connected to the North Sea. We don't know, it's not written in the sources, but we might assume that this was in the back of his mind so that Norway could continue to be Christianized. Well, now finally I want to finish with Olaf Tryggvason and say a few words about the end of his life. He will die just 3 years after the foundation of the city. And he died during a battle, the Battle of Svorder, a famous battle, against a coalition of armies that was the army of Denmark and the army of Sweden, who defeated him. Now, this means that Olaf Tryggvason reigned for only 5 years in Norway. We've said that in the previous episodes already. But nonetheless, as you can see, through the past episodes, the impact of Olaf Tryggvason has been great, even though his methods of baptism, as we've explained last week, were surely not biblical at all. Nonetheless, the impact, what God has done through him, and how the Christianization was triggered through him, really began to transform the nation of Norway. And the transformation will happen through the centuries. God will be at work through the centuries in transforming Norway, in bringing a lot of good to Norway and making it the Christian nation that it was up until very recently. Well, I'm Cedric Placentino. See you next time for another stage of European Journeys.